Hey everyone, this is Kevin T. Rodriguez, film critic of iCritic.net, and I'm making a video mainly for my Save BluRay 3D blog. I have gotten this question so many times. Kevin, what are your top 10 favorite BluRay 3D discs? And I combed through my collection. I took notes. I did a lot of processing. We'll put some here, we'll take some out, we'll put it back, we'll reverse it. And I have decided on 10 BluRay 3Ds that are definitely worth your time if you have a 3D TV and are capable of projecting it. Now, one thing that was always disappointing is every time I read an article about how 3D TV is dead, there's no reason to get it, I could always think of well, what about this movie? What about this movie? I would not want to watch these movies in 2D after having seen them in 3D, because the 3D actually brought a lot to the table. And it bugs me that I was only able to whittle it down to 10, but top 10 lists are what people come to YouTube for. Maybe we'll make a runner-up list. I don't know. So I have made this list. I have them right here. I'm ready to show them to you. A few rules before we get started. If it's part of a series, I have decided to limit it to one in the series, because sometimes if one was good, the whole series was good, and I can't have multiple movies from the same franchise when I can only have 10 in the first place. Also, I had to deliberately start taking animated films out because animated films fit 3D like a glove. So much so that, hey, I will probably make a separate list for the top 10 best animated films on BluRay 3D. That said, a couple did make it in because I do think that these movies are definitely a good case for buying a 3D TV, or having the option anyway. So without further ado, let's start with the list. And at number 10, we have Tron Legacy. Now, the interesting thing about this movie is that I gave it a negative review on my website. I stand by that review. I agree there are flaws, and yet it is a guilty pleasure. And what's unique about this one is that it's not completely in 3D, but for a good reason. This is a movie where in the real world, everything's 2D. It's flat. And then when he gets sucked into the 3D world, not only does a 3D come right at you, but when he's in the computer world, then the image expands for the IMAX aspect ratio, and everything's in 3D. It's a completely different world, and it's very transformative, and it's a great effect. So mainly for that reason, this is number 10, although even though, again, it's not a good movie, I kind of enjoy it, so it just squeaked by on the list. At number 9, we have The Amazing Spider-Man. Now, I know a lot of you are going to cringe because this is not the best Spider-Man movie. The best Spider-Man movie is Spider-Man 2, but it's not in 3D. Now, at that point, some people might be saying, well, what about Spider-Man Homecoming? That is a better movie than this, and it is true. However, Spider-Man Homecoming and The Amazing Spider-Man 2 were up-converted. That means they were shot in 2D, then they were up-converted to 3D. The Amazing Spider-Man is the only movie that was filmed with 3D cameras, and because of that, the 3D is more immersive, it's more clean, it's more smooth, and it makes a lot more sense. In fact, I'm kind of bothered that they didn't use the same cameras for Amazing Spider-Man 2, because if anything, this shows why 3D should be used in superhero movies, because superhero movies, they're the only ones that are really in 3D anymore, and yet no one really films them in 3D. And The Amazing Spider-Man made a great case that the action could be more intense and more involving if you filmed it in 3D. And yeah, they probably had the same financial results with the other ones that were up-converted, and up-conversion is cheaper. But in my opinion, this shows that if you're going to do it, you might as well do it right. Now, number 8 on the list, we have the movie that my mom and Aunt Mary both said was the best 3D experience they ever had in theaters, and that is The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies. Now, one thing that should be noted, in the theaters, this was shown in 48 frames per second. For some reason, you can't do that on a Blu-ray 3D, so it's pared down to 24. That said, the 3D experience is still amazing, and particularly the battle sequences are so good that really, if you put this side by side with the 2D version, it's pretty clear which version people would prefer. Now, on another note about this, you will notice this is the extended edition, which is the R-rated version. This is the only extended edition of any of the Hobbit movies that I can fully back. It's kind of like the Lord of the Rings trilogy extended edition. After watching them for so many times, I've come to the harsh realization that extended editions of Fellowship of the Ring, don't need to watch it. Extended edition of the Two Towers, don't need to watch it. Theatrical cuts will save you about an hour each time, and they're better. But Return of the King, that one's worth seeing extended, and so is this one. In fact, it's so interesting because I bought the theatrical cuts for everyone. Then I got all the extended cuts. I have since sold the extended cuts of the first two Hobbit movies and kept the theatrical cuts while selling the theatrical cut of the Battle of the Five Armies, but keeping the extended cut. So, I just want to throw that out there. Get this one extended. All right, and at number 7 of the list, we have what many people would probably argue is the 3D experience, and that's Avatar. And of course, Avatar was going to be on this list. The only thing you might find a little strange is, why is it so low on the list? I mean, I'm going to be honest. In terms of if we were just grading this on pure 3D goodness, this would be much, much higher. This would be 1 or 2, maybe 3 at the lowest. The reason it's lower is because even though I selected it as the best film of the year when it came out, and I still defend that choice. I'll link to my review below so you know what I'm talking about, but it's pretty clear compared to other movies, this is not as good. And I wanted to put movies that I felt were better in terms of story and overall experience. Avatar is definitely a visual wonder. But people have pointed out that, the story's a little weak and the character development, not that great. So it still was obviously going to make the list because this is considered by many people to be the best 3D movie I've ever seen. In fact, this was the movie that reopened the craze and got people super excited about it again, so it has to be on the list. And I agree it's one of the best 3D movies you're going to see. I do think the future movies that we're going to show on this list are a little better, though, so that's why this one's so low. At number 6, we have Martin Scorsese's Hugo. Now, it's kind of funny because this is one of the hardest 3D movies to sell. It uses the technology so good. So very good is this in 3D, and yet it's a movie not and a lot of people really want to see in 3D, which is strange. It's directed by Martin Scorsese, who actually filmed with 3D digital cameras. He forego the film because he loves film, in case you didn't know, and he filmed this in 3D because he had a vision for the 3D, and that vision worked beautifully. And if Avatar was the movie that brought 3D into the homes, Hugo should have been the movie to make it respectable. For some reason, that didn't happen. That might have been because not a lot of people saw the movie. I mean, it made like $80 million, but that's really not a lot. But that did not happen, and so what we have now is this great Martin Scorsese movie, utter classic. This might even be one of his top 5 best films ever that not a lot of people see, and when they do see it, they see it in 2D, which it looks fine in all fairness. I've seen it in 2D. I mean, Scorsese was interesting. He filmed it in a way where the 2D didn't really take away from the movie, unlike some movies like Avatar, where when you watch it in 2D, the shots look a little weird. The shots look, for the most part, look fine in 2D, but when you watch it in 3D, it's like, wow. It's like, look at what has this accomplishment. Like, what is this? And so if you have a 3D TV, this is definitely worth getting. I don't know if it's easy to get anymore. That's the thing about these movies. There's only a couple that I am aware are still readily available, and I don't think this is one of them. So good luck finding it. And at number 5 on the list, we have a movie that chances are you have seen in 3D, and most of the time you have a chance to see it in 3D every Christmas, and that is The Polar Express, because IMAX typically brings this back every November or mid-December. And for many years, it was like they just showed The Polar Express every Christmas. And then I think with Avatar, that tradition was more or less broken, and now they show major movies. But some IMAXs still bring it back in 3D. Thankfully, the 3D edition at home is very compelling. It's not the IMAX screen size, of course, but the 3D is still good at home, and this is the movie that really first proved, even before Avatar, that 3D could be a great storytelling device. A fun little story about the Polar Express. When it came out, it didn't look like it was going to do very well. It opened, I think, at number 3, and people said, well, that's it, it's done. And 2D showings of the film were very empty. But the IMAX 3D version was constantly sold out. And in fact, the IMAX 3D version was so strong, it stayed well beyond Christmas. And then, as stated before, IMAX would bring it back every year. So thanks to the 3D version, the Polar Express was seen and is considered a classic now. And here's the best part about this particular Blu-ray. It will play in 2D. They put the 3D and the 2D on one disc. So if you pop the disc in and it doesn't detect a 3D TV, it says, hey, we can't detect a 3D version. We're playing it in 2D. So this is also probably one of the most common 3D Blu-rays that are out there on the market. And you can still get it, and I highly recommend you do, even if you don't have the 3D TV. Now, there are DVDs that are cheaper than this, but for $4 more, get the 3D version. And at number 4 on the list, we have one of the movies that ties for winning the most Academy Awards without winning Best Picture, and that would be Gravity. Now, this is a wonderful movie, and this is one of those movies, kind of like Avatar, that when you take the 3D away, something about the movie is just a little bit different. It's not like these movies are shallow. In fact, this has a very touching story about faith and survival and basically desperation in a very bad situation. But what the 3D brings out is the emptiness of space, the vast, wide spectrum of space where there's just nothing there. And one of my favorite scenes that just is utterly ruined in the 2D version, I'm just going to state that right now, is when Sandra Bullock is in the cockpit and she's crying and she's trying to talk to someone over the radio who she can't communicate with because, it's a different language. And she starts crying like, I'm going to die. Don't you realize this? And she's crying and the tears are just floating. What a powerful image to highlight just the hopelessness of being in space. It's not as effective in 2D, and so for that scene and many other scenes like it, the 3D is definitely worth seeing. I actually can't even watch this one in 2D. It's just that drastically different. And the third spot on the list is this. Now, oh boy, How to Train Your Dragon. I love this movie. I just love this movie. You can't convince me that Toy Story 3 deserved to win Best Picture when this was out at the time. I'm sorry, you just can't convince me. But the 3D was so good in this that when they first started selling TVs, the 3D TVs, I think it was Samsung, I forget exactly who, but they decided to lock on this movie as an exclusive. Like, you had to buy their TV to get this movie, and people would do it because that's how good the 3D was in this movie. And what this really brought to the table was how flight could be portrayed in 3D. The flight in this movie is so good in 3D, makes you feel like you're actually flying. I remember the first time I saw it in IMAX 3D, and he was doing the test flight, as they called it. And I remember just grabbing the seats of my chair. I thought I was going to fall out, and we weren't even moving. And DreamWorks consistently makes the best 3D movies. They always do. 3D works wonderfully in their movies, and that's why it's so frustrating for them, especially that they don't even have 3D imports for some of their movies like Trolls and Captain Underpants, which I now cherish those 3D experiences in the theaters because I watch them in 2D at home, and it's just not the same. And thank goodness this is available though. If I had to get rid of all of these 3D movies, if I could only pick one, I should say, I would keep this one, even though it's number 3 on the list, because I know it's, some people don't want a cartoon to be the number one reason. So I came up with a couple other choices to help sell you on that idea. But trust me, you definitely want this one in your collection if you have a 3D TV. And for the number 2 spot, I picked a director who has actually made several of the best 3D experiences I have, but I also didn't want one director to monopolize it, so I just picked what I felt was the best example of how 3D can really improve something that you didn't think could be improved by being in 3D. And I have 2 titles like that. One was Dolphin Tale, which is not on this list, and the other is this. The Walk by Robert Zemeckis. Now, it's funny, I have to share a little story about this because when I have friends who have got a 3D TV one day, and I go to their house every week, and they texted me, "We got a 3D TV, please bring some 3D movies that we can pick from." And I picked one movie to bring over, and that was this. And I told them, this is the one you want to break in the new TV with. And I think they were expecting me to bring like Avatar or an action movie, and those would have been fine. But what I wanted to illustrate was that 3D, which has been pointed out, doesn't benefit everything. And it's true, it doesn't. But it can benefit anything if the right director was using it. Robert Zemeckis shot this with natural 3D cameras, and everyone who sees this in 3D are amazed at how much the 3D adds. You wouldn't think a movie about a guy who, tightropes across the World Trade Center would benefit from being in 3D much, but this does, and it's a thoroughly great experience in 3D. And man, it actually breaks my heart that this wasn't a box office hit, and because of this, this is ironically where people start saying 3D must be dead, because if something that is improved this much by a 3D presentation can't get people to see it in 3D, then what will? Now, my number one choice is going to seem really strange to some of you, but I think this is the best Blu-ray 3D. And let me tell you why. If Avatar brought 3D into the homes, like if that convinced people to come out to see 3D, and if Avatar was a reason for you to invest in a 3D TV, then Life of Pi was the movie that helped keep it alive a little bit longer. It even says on the cover, the next Avatar. And that is a strange comparison to make because Life of Pi and Avatar are two distinctly very different movies. Avatar is an action movie. This is a drama. Avatar has an environmental message. Life of Pi is about a boy confronting his failing faith in the middle of the ocean. But what they do have in common is that they were both filmed with 3D cameras. They were also both filmed by directors who had vision and knew how to properly utilize the 3D format. And even Roger Ebert, who was he didn't like 3D very much. He spoke against it so often it got ridiculous, but he liked the 3D in this one. And I don't know, it just feels like my 3D collection would feel empty without it. Not to mention, this is a fabulous movie. This is something that I have watched several times, and I have cried pretty much every time. It's just amazing how beautiful it was, and no offense to Argo, but boy, did the Academy make a mistake giving Best Picture that. This is what should have won Best Picture. And so, and again, this is another one where it's like, you wouldn't think it would benefit being in 3D much, because most of the time it's about a kid in a boat in the ocean with a tiger. It doesn't seem like there's a lot there, but it also didn't seem like there was enough there for a movie. And yet, this movie excels in every way, including the 3D. So just a quick recap. At number 10, we have Tron Legacy. At number 9, we have The Amazing Spider-Man. At number 8, we have The Hobbit, The Battle of the Five Armies Extended Edition. At number 7, we have Avatar. At number 6, we have Hugo. At number 5, we have The Polar Express. Number 4, we have Gravity. Number 3, we have How to Train Your Dragon. Number 2, we have The Walk. And at number 1, we have Life of Pi. If you own a 3D TV, or at least considering getting a 3D TV, these are the movies that you should get. These are the movies that your collection will be just a little bit incomplete unless you own them. What about you, viewers? Do any of you have 3D TVs? If so, do you agree with this list? If not, what 3D Blu-rays would you recommend to people if they were looking to invest in a TV? I would love to know. Comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe. If you enjoy the videos I make, consider becoming a Patreon member for $1 a month. And as always, blame responsibly. Have a good one.